Hey guys, it's Cam from Craft and Tailored. In this episode of What Is On My Wrist, we are talking about an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak reference 5402. This is a B series that is in mint condition. Obviously, AP has been the topic of many Watch Idiot Savant discussions. The brand has seen a lot of growth. The 1500 series or the 15202s have increased in price a lot over the past few years, but we have a really awesome example of the OG, the original, and wanted to share it with you in this episode of What Is On My Wrist. Talk a little bit about the history behind the brand. It's obviously a gentle watch. Gerald Genta designed some really awesome pieces, but since we had this really nice example wanted to take a second to talk a little bit about the history of the reference and more importantly, kind of highlight this exact model and this exact example because it's very rare to find them in this condition and was worthy of showing this as kind of the, I guess, case study example for the reference. So first unveiled by AP in 1972 and obviously designed by the famous horological designer Gerald Genta, who's also known for designing the Patek Nautilus. And we've done some really awesome videos on the Patek Nautiluses. I'll provide links up here, or we can provide some infographics or something like that. We've done some videos on the Patek 3700 series, which is also an icon of design, also designed by Gerald Genta. So if you haven't done so already, click the link below, above, here, wherever to check those out. So the reference 5402 is often referred to as the Jumbo. Same thing with the early 3700 series of Patek Nautiluses. The reason why they refer to those references as the Jumbo is they're 39 millimeters. And I think what's kind of interesting about the design of this watch is that it is kind of the watch that bridges the gap between, I guess, a dress watch, but also a sports watch. What's interesting about the design is that they're very thin, both of them. The 5402 is very, very thin and very, kind of sleek. Matter of fact, one of the reasons why both the Nautilus and the early Royal Oaks, being the 5402 and the Nautilus being the 3700s, don't have sweep seconds hands is because Genta wanted to keep the design so thin. In order to do that, they actually had to do away with the sweep seconds hand to keep that actually thin and more sleek. But the watch is 39 millimeters, and I guess for that time period, 39 millimeters in the dress and sport watch kind of range was, I guess, jumbo or oversized, right? Most dress watches were 36, if not 34 millimeters. So to launch something in 1972 that was 39 millimeters was kind of groundbreaking. What I think is unique, and if we look back at history, in 72, 39 millimeters was really groundbreaking and big, and people were talking about that, and how could Audemars Piguet release something that was so oversized in steel and at this kind of crazy price point. But what I think is unique about that is if I look at what Rolex is doing and some of the other brands today, they're kind of doing, I think, the same thing. Do I agree with it? I don't know. Is 41 millimeters like the right size for a sub? I think watches are definitely trending larger, and I think that Rolex, perfect example of this, not really comparing it to AP, is doing things that are kind of pushing the boundaries and turning a lot of heads, and whether that will work or not for the brand, I don't know, but I think in this case it kind of did. And I think if I look back at horological history, this was something that was kind of groundbreaking at the time, and I think a lot of that is happening in today's horological watch climate, so to speak, where brands are kind of pushing the boundaries of design and things like that. So kind of interesting. So let's talk a little bit more about the technical specifications. 39 millimeters in width, but ultra thin at 7 millimeters thick. That's a really thin watch. The other thing too is that, again, kind of going back into the early 1970s specifically, we had kind of the quartz crisis that was happening. So for AP and Patek to release a watch that was not only incorporating an integrated bracelet and all that kind of stuff, I think is really interesting as a whole, because quartz was out there, people were really investing in that. That was kind of the new technology, and they really wanted to create something that was artful and tasteful and ultimately ultra thin. So interesting to look back at that time in history and also to kind of compare it to where we're at now in 2021 with the things that just got released at I don't know, it used to be Bezel World. I don't know, it's like Watches and Wonderful or something like that. I'm kidding, I'm being facetious, but something that's really cool that I'll also mention is that we wrote an article about the AP5402 on our blog. So I'll provide a link in the description below for that as well. But kind of goes over, you know, the 5402, Genta's designs, the Bezel fair, kind of the way that this came to be. Most people don't know where the name Royal Oak comes from. And we actually did a review on a yellow gold Royal Oak where I kind of talk about the same thing. So I won't do like a total refresher, but AP chose the name Royal Oak, which actually came from the names of the 8 vessels of Britain's Royal Navy, which received their names from the ancient hollowed oak tree within which King Charles II of England hidden to escape the Roundheads during the English Civil War following the Battle of Worcester in 1651. The other thing that I think is really interesting is that there's basically 8 facets to the Royal Oak. And so 8 ships, 8 facets to the bezel. There's a lot of thought behind the name of this watch. And I think the other thing too that's kind of interesting is that it's very nautical in theme. You have the Royal Oak, nautical in theme, the Nautilus, nautical in theme. What's really cool too is the Royal Oak and also the Paddock Nautilus is powered by a very similar movement. Obviously, it's kind of based off the Jaeger LeCoultre caliber 920, but Jaeger, Vacheron, AP, and Paddock all kind of work together to create this 920 movement. So I think that that's also an interesting facet of horological history, where you have these watch companies back in, you know, the late 1960s, early 1970s working to develop, you know, this 920 movement, which was for a very, very long time, ultimately the thinnest automatic movement ever produced. Really cool movement, very beautifully finished movement. So let's talk a little bit about A series and B series, okay? So this is kind of interesting. So what is AP logo down? You guys are probably gonna hear that a lot. Why are A and B series a little bit more exclusive than C or D series, and why do they fetch the premiums that they do versus maybe some of the other models? AP logo down basically means that the AP logo is located at the 6 o'clock position on the dial, only in the A and the B series of watches. In the C and D series, the AP logo moves up to the 12 o'clock position, and instead of having, you know, essentially these 2 markers here, similar to like what you would see on, you know, a Nautilus, you ultimately have the AP logo that serves as the 12 o'clock marker, which is located at the 12 o'clock position on the dial versus kind of above the 6 o'clock marker on the dial. What's really kind of unique as well is that when AP kind of relaunched the Royal Oak, especially with like the 15202, they kind of went back to this design. So with the ultra thin in the AP 15202, you basically see the A and B series of design layout. And I think it's kind of a nod to the original, which is obviously the 5402. The other thing that's interesting is basically on the back side of the case, you'll see, you know, number B and then the serial number, or number A and then the serial number, or number C and the serial number. So, you know, if the watch has been serviced or whatever and they replace the dial, if you have a B series or an A series with AP logo at 12, then you know obviously that's a service dial. This is not, this is an original. Let's talk a little bit about the condition of this specific example. I want to take you through some of the details of this specific piece, and then also talk about what to look for when purchasing a 5402, whether it be an A series or a B series or maybe one of the later models. We can kind of use this as a reference example because it is in such nice condition, and I think there's things that you're going to see in this watch that you might not see in other examples. So this kind of serves as, again, a good case study. So obviously, you know, there's 2 dial variants. There's actually a lot of different dial variants within the 5402 range, but for sake of sanity and for time, we'll just kind of say that there's AP logo down and AP logo up. AP logo down, where the AP logo again is going to be found at the 6 o'clock position rather. What you're going to see is that dial format in the A and the B series, whereas C and D series, again, the logo is located at the top. There's a couple different variations of clasps and inner clasps on the bracelet depending on case weight or case material rather. You know, these watches were produced very rarely in white gold, very rarely in yellow gold, and then in two-tone, and then of course steel. The watch was initially launched in steel, but they did make, you know, other variants of them as well. You know, what's interesting too about the case is that it is of course geometric, and if the watch had ever received a polish, you would lose a lot of what we would call like these beveling and kind of faceting and ultimately chamfers, right? So this example retains all of that original factory casework, which is something that is obviously very hard to find now, because as these watches were worn and serviced, they received polishing and excessive wear and things like that. So this example remains in mint condition. The other thing too is, the dial remains in flawless and in stunning condition. A lot of the early A and B series dials, similar to like what you would see in the Patek 3700 series in the earlier range, the top lacquer of the dial was done very thinly and ultimately results in a lot of those early A and B series going tropical. So you'll see a lot of tropical A and B series. It's actually more uncommon to find one that is in mint condition, like this example, that retains kind of that deep dark blue, kind of slate blue dial as we have in this example here. So the other thing, interestingly, the early crowns matching the bezel and the overall geometrical shape of the watch in the earlier references remained unsigned. It wasn't until the later references where you'll actually see the AP logo on the crown. So this retains its original crown. The overall condition of this watch is insane. One thing too, and I'll try to show you, but if you hold the watch kind of with the dial flat perpendicular to, let's say, the ceiling, what you'll see is that the bracelet kind of curves off the case, right? Normally what you'll see in a watch that has been really worn is the bracelet will literally just fall straight off of the case, and that's just due to the bracelet being worn and kind of loosening up over time, losing material and metal and things like that. So this actually kind of comes off of the case beautifully, and that's what you're gonna see in a watch that has, a lot of factory.
We are sorry for the loud-ass truck driving by. Now, back to your regularly scheduled content.
So this bracelet is in really good condition, shows, very minimal stretch, if any at all. Of course, in an original example that hasn't been restored, you're gonna see some movement in the bracelet, right? The bracelets are made to move, but on wrist, just as a pure work of art. The other thing too is like on this flip-lock clasp here, we see the original Audemars Piguet text that is spelled out. The later or service flip-lock clasp would basically have the AP logo instead of having it spelled out. So this is a really nicely preserved, well-kept example. The other cool thing about this one in specific is that it does retain an early extract from the archive and actually a printout showing the actual register of the case and the movement number and all that kind of stuff. So really, really cool, complete set, if you will. This one being from 1976, it shows that production date in the register, which is really, really cool. So in any case, I kind of wanted to, again, we've talked about 5402s on the channel before. We reviewed a gold one, which was in really, really awesome and great condition. It's a favorite watch of mine. Between, the 5402 and the 3700, obviously Royal Oak versus the Nautilus, I kind of find myself being more of a Royal Oak guy. I like the geometric shape of this, whereas the Nautilus is a little bit more soft and kind of more rounded, and I kind of like, again, just the way that this wears. Tyler, on the other hand, is more of a 3700 guy. So just kind of throwing that out there. In any case, guys, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll provide a link in the description below. And if you want to learn more about the Royal Oak, I'll provide some links below so that you can check out the blog posts and some links to the other videos that we've done as well. If you haven't done so already, be sure to check us out on Instagram at @craftandtailored. And if you've got watch questions, we're here and happy to help. Drop us a line at info@craftandtailored.com. Thanks again, guys, for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one. I can say interesting, I can say whatever it is that I want.